The sky, they say, is a great equalizer, a vast and unforgiving expanse that cares little for the titles and fortunes of the men who dare to traverse it. But Captain Frank Corrigan had never believed that. For 35 years, the cockpit of a commercial airliner had been his throne room, the flight deck his kingdom, and the 4 gold stripes on his shoulders, his crown. He saw a young black woman in seat 1A, the coveted throne of his transatlantic court, and his mind, a machine honed by decades of unchallenged authority and subtle prejudice, rendered its verdict. She did not belong. He didn't just question her, he sought to dismantle her. He called security. He held the power to ground a multi-million-dollar aircraft just to prove a point. He believed he was upholding the sacred order of his domain, but in reality, he was piloting his own life into a catastrophic, unrecoverable tailspin. Because the woman in 1A wasn't just a passenger with a valid ticket. She wasn't just a VIP, when the true nature of her journey was revealed, not by a document, but by an act of sheer, breathtaking brilliance in the face of chaos. The authority would drain from the captain's face faster than cabin pressure in a hull breach. What happens when the person you try to cast out as a fraud is the only one who can save a life at 38,000 feet? You are about to find out. This is the story of how one pilot's ingrained bias became the instrument of his own public demolition. The evening air in the International First Class Lounge at JFK was a carefully curated symphony of hushed tones and expensive perfumes. Rain, thick and relentless as a biblical plague, lashed against the panoramic windows, painting the runway lights into impressionistic streaks of emerald and ruby. The weather had thrown the evening schedule into disarray, but here, in this carpeted sanctuary, the chaos of the main terminal felt a world away. Dr. Anya Sharma sat in a high-backed leather armchair, the soft glow of her tablet illuminating the focused intensity in her dark eyes. She was reviewing electron microscopy images of cardiac tissue, her mind a universe away from the complimentary champagne and canapes circulating around her. At 32, Anya possessed a quiet presence that often led people to underestimate her. She wore no makeup, her hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant twist, and her attire, a pair of well-tailored black trousers, a silk blouse, and a soft grey cashmere cardigan, spoke of comfort and practicality, not opulence. The only hint of luxury was the slim, understated Patek Philippe on her wrist, a gift from the Emir of Qatar, whose life she had saved with a groundbreaking surgical procedure a year prior. She wasn't trying to hide, but she had long ago learned that in her world, the less noise she made, the more people listened when she finally chose to speak. She was on her way to London, not for a conference or a vacation, but for a singular, critical purpose. A 10-year-old boy, the son of a prominent British diplomat, lay in a specialized ward at Great Ormond Street Hospital, his heart failing from a rare congenital defect that had baffled Europe's finest surgeons. Anya was his last hope. She was one of perhaps 5 people on the planet who had successfully performed the intricate, experimental procedure that could save him. The flight, the first-class seat, the expedited passage, it was all arranged by a grateful government, a desperate attempt to ferry a miracle worker across the ocean. A muffled announcement signaled the boarding of Global Alliance Flight 117 to London Heathrow. Anya packed her tablet into her worn leather satchel, a bag that had accompanied her through medical school, residency, and countless international consultations. It held not just her electronics, but a small, specialized kit of diagnostic tools she never traveled without, a habit ingrained from years of being the most qualified person in any given room, whether that room was an operating theater or a coffee shop. She bypassed the priority boarding line, which was already a tangle of bespoke suits and designer luggage, and approached the gate agent directly. She presented her passport and a unique government-issued travel folio instead of a standard boarding pass. The agent, a flustered young man named Kevin, frowned at the unfamiliar document. "Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass. You can scan it from your phone or—" "This is my clearance," Anya said softly, tapping a finger on the official seal. "It's a diplomatic medical transport. My seat is 1A. The name is Dr. Sharma." Kevin's eyes widened slightly. He typed her name into the system. His screen didn't just confirm her seat. It flashed with a series of flags and priority codes he'd only ever seen in training manuals. Priority 1. Medical diplomatic. Do not delay. Expedite all requests. His entire demeanor shifted from dismissive to deferential. "My apologies, doctor. Of course. Right this way. You're the first to board. The purser is expecting you." Anya gave him a small, reassuring smile and walked down the jet bridge. The tunnel was cool and sterile, a gateway between worlds. She took a deep, centering breath, shifting her focus from the cellular level of cardiac tissue to the immediate task ahead. 8 hours of rest, before 12 hours of surgery. She stepped onto the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The first-class cabin was a cocoon of muted greys and soft blues, the air smelling faintly of lavender and new leather. A flight attendant, a severe-looking woman in her late 40s with a name tag that read Margaret, was meticulously arranging newspapers in a magazine rack. She turned, her professional smile clicking into place, but it faltered for a half-second as her eyes took in Anya. It was a look Anya knew well, a fleeting moment of cognitive dissonance, a brain trying to reconcile the image before it with a preconceived notion of who belonged in this space. "Welcome aboard," Margaret said, her voice crisp and professional, the warmth not quite reaching her eyes. "May I see your boarding pass?" Anya explained the situation again, handing over the folio. Margaret examined it with a practiced, skeptical eye, her gaze flicking from the document to Anya and back again. "Seat 1A. Very good. I'm Margaret, the purser for this flight. Please let me know if you need anything at all." "Thank you, Margaret. I'll likely just be sleeping. A glass of still water would be wonderful, though." "Of course." Anya settled into the spacious suite, a private pod with a lie-flat seat, a personal minibar, and a large entertainment screen. She stowed her satchel, took out a thick medical journal, and tried to quiet her mind. She noticed Margaret serving a pre-departure glass of champagne to a man in a pinstripe suit across the aisle, but her own water was nowhere to be seen. A small slight, but a slight nonetheless. A data point. The rest of the cabin filled. The low hum of polite conversation and the clinking of glasses created a soothing ambience. Then, the cockpit crew arrived. The first officer, a young, eager man, nodded politely as he passed. He was followed by Captain Frank Corrigan. Corrigan was a man built from the spare parts of a bygone era. He was nearing 60, with a full head of silver hair, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from a block of granite, and the ramrod posture of the Air Force pilot he had once been. He wore his uniform like a suit of armor, and his eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, swept across the cabin with an air of proprietary ownership. He saw the pinstriped suit and gave a curt, approving nod. He saw an elderly couple and offered a tight, professional smile. Then his gaze landed on Anya in 1A. And it stopped. He didn't look at her. He looked through her. It was a look of instant dismissal. He saw a young black woman in a simple cardigan, reading a book, and his internal calculus produced an error message. He turned to Margaret, who was standing near the galley, and crooked a finger, beckoning her over. He leaned in, his voice a low growl that carried easily in the quiet cabin. Anya lowered her journal, her senses suddenly on high alert. "Who is that in 1 Alpha?" Corrigan demanded, not bothering to lower his voice. Margaret glanced nervously at Anya. "That's Dr. Sharma, Captain. She's on a diplomatic transport." Corrigan scoffed, a wet, dismissive sound. "Doctor? Doctor of what, Instagram? Look at her. She looks like she won a radio contest. Did you verify her ticket? I don't want some influencer who's scammed an upgrade making a scene when the real passenger shows up." Anya felt a familiar heat rise in her chest. It was an old, weary anger, the kind that had fueled her through years of being the only woman, the only person of color in lecture halls and operating rooms. Watch, observe. Collect the data, she told herself, a mantra she'd developed to maintain her composure in the face of casual bigotry. "Her credentials are in the system, Captain," Margaret said, her voice tight. "Priority 1 clearance. I checked them myself." "I don't care what the computer says. The computer doesn't have instincts," Corrigan muttered. "Keep an eye on her. I've got a bad feeling." He straightened up and strode toward the cockpit. But as he passed Anya's seat, he paused. He leaned down, invading her personal space, his cologne, a sharp, spicy scent, assaulting her senses. "Enjoying the seat?" he asked. The question was a challenge, a verbal jab testing her defenses. Anya looked up from her journal, her eyes meeting his. She did not smile. "It's adequate, thank you, Captain." His eyes narrowed. He had expected deference, perhaps a flicker of fear. He received none. He grunted, a sound of profound dissatisfaction, and disappeared into the cockpit, the door clicking shut with an air of finality. Anya exhaled slowly. The journey had barely begun, and a storm was already gathering, one that had nothing to do with the weather outside. 30 minutes later, the cabin doors were secured, and the plane began its slow, lumbering pushback from the gate. Anya still hadn't received her water. She pressed the call button. A junior flight attendant, a young woman named Chloe, appeared almost instantly. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I'd asked the purser for a glass of still water about half an hour ago," Anya said politely. Chloe's eyes flickered toward the galley, where Margaret was pointedly ignoring them. "Oh, I'm so sorry. We're preparing for takeoff now. All beverage service is suspended until we reach cruising altitude." It was a lie, and not a particularly good one. The man in the pinstripe suit was on his second glass of champagne. Anya simply nodded. "I see. Thank you." She returned to her journal, but she wasn't reading. She was processing the data. The purser's initial skepticism, the captain's overt hostility, the deliberate denial of a simple courtesy. It was a pattern, a systematic effort to make her feel unwelcome, to remind her that, in their eyes, she was an anomaly who needed to be managed. As the plane ascended through the thick, turbulent cloud layer, the cabin lights dimmed. Anya closed her eyes, attempting to meditate, to clear her mind for the task that awaited her in London. But her thoughts were interrupted by the click of the cockpit door opening. Captain Corrigan emerged. He was holding a printed copy of the passenger manifest, his face a mask of theatrical concern. He strode directly to her seat. "Ma'am," he said, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of the nearby passengers. The cabin, which had settled into a quiet hum, fell silent. Anya opened her eyes. "Yes, Captain. I'm going to need to see your travel documents again." "I showed them to the gate agent and to your purser," Anya stated, her voice calm and even. "And now you're showing them to me," Corrigan retorted, holding out his hand. "There seems to be a discrepancy in our records. This seat 1A is often held for air marshals or crew members on repositioning flights. Your name doesn't match any of our internal lists. I need to see a government-issued photo ID to match the name on this folio. This was a new tactic, a bureaucratic trap. He knew her passport had been checked at the gate. He was creating a problem where none existed, manufacturing a reason to challenge her legitimacy. "Captain," Anya said, her patience wearing thin, "my identity was verified. My clearance is in your system. You are creating a disturbance." "I'm creating a disturbance?" He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Ma'am, I am responsible for the safety and security of 200 souls on this aircraft. An individual in a priority seat with questionable credentials is a security issue. Now, are you going to show me your ID, or do I need to take further action?" The man in the pinstripe suit was now watching openly, a frown on his face. The elderly couple behind him looked distressed. Anya knew she was at a crossroads. She could comply, feeding his power trip, or she could stand her ground and risk escalation. She chose the latter. "I will not be participating in this theater, Captain. You have my documents. You have the manifest. If you have a legitimate security concern, I suggest you follow protocol and have ground control verify my credentials through the diplomatic channel listed on my folio. Otherwise, I would like to be left in peace." Corrigan's face turned a dangerous shade of mottled red. His authority, the very core of his identity, had been publicly challenged. "That's it," he snarled. "You're a non-compliant passenger. For all I know, that folio is a forgery and you're a security threat." He turned to Margaret, who was hovering anxiously in the aisle. "Margaret, get on the horn to dispatch. Tell them we have a Code 3 situation, a potentially fraudulent passenger refusing to identify herself. We may need to divert the plane." The threat hung in the air, a weapon of mass disruption. It was the nuclear option. It would cost the airline hundreds of thousands of dollars, inconvenience every passenger, and make international news. And he was willing to do it, all to win this battle of wills. Suddenly, a strangled cry came from the row behind Anya. "Help! Somebody help! My husband!" Anya turned. The elderly woman was standing, her face a mask of terror. Her husband was slumped in his seat, his face pale and clammy, his hand clutching his chest. He was gasping for air, his lips turning a faint shade of blue. The cabin erupted in quiet panic. Chloe, the junior flight attendant, froze, her eyes wide with fear. Margaret rushed over, her professional composure cracking. Sir, can you hear me?" Captain Corrigan, for his part, was momentarily stunned. The medical emergency had completely derailed his power play. "Margaret, get the med kit. Page for a doctor," he commanded, his voice tight with annoyance rather than concern. Anya didn't hesitate. She unbuckled her seatbelt in one fluid motion. "I am a doctor," she said, her voice cutting through the rising panic with absolute authority. She was already in the aisle, kneeling beside the man. "Stay back, Mum," Margaret said, trying to intervene. "We have procedures. I am a cardiothoracic surgeon," Anya snapped, not looking up. "Get me your onboard diagnostic kit, now! And an oxygen tank." Her tone was so commanding, so utterly certain, that Margaret simply obeyed. Anya placed 2 fingers on the man's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was thready and erratic. His breathing was shallow. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" The man, whose name tag on his sweater read Arthur, could only gasp. "Okay, Arthur, you're having a cardiac event. I'm going to help you." She turned to his wife. "Does he have a history of heart problems? Any medications?" "He has angina," the woman sobbed. "He has nitroglycerin pills. In his bag." "Get them," Anya commanded. Chloe returned with the onboard medical kit, a bulky red case. Anya ripped it open, her hands moving with practiced speed. She pulled out a stethoscope and an automated blood pressure cuff. As she worked, she issued a stream of clear, concise orders. "Margaret, I need you to inform the captain we have a critical medical emergency. We need to divert to the nearest major airport with a cardiac center. Find out our ETA to Gander or Boston. Chloe, help his wife find the pills and get me one. Place it under his tongue." Captain Corrigan stood in the aisle, a helpless, resentful observer. This was his plane, his crisis to manage, and he was being completely sidelined. He watched as Anya inflated the blood pressure cuff, listened to the man's heart, and checked his pupils. She was a whirlwind of focused, efficient action. "His pressure is dropping fast and his heart is in atrial fibrillation," Anya announced calmly. "The nitro isn't enough. I need the defibrillator." Margaret's face went pale. "The AED. Doctor, our protocol says we can only use that when there's no pulse." "Your protocol will kill him," Anya said, her eyes flashing. "His heart is in an unstable, chaotic rhythm. If we don't shock it back into a normal sinus rhythm, he's going to go into full cardiac arrest within minutes. Get me the defibrillator." Corrigan stepped forward. "Now hold on just a minute. I am the captain of this aircraft, and I am not authorizing the use of the defibrillator against protocol. We could be liable." Anya stood up, turning to face him. Her 5'5" frame seemed to radiate an energy that made the 6'2" captain shrink. "Captain," she said, her voice low and dangerously calm, "a man is dying 3 feet away from you. His life is not a liability. It's a human being. You have 2 choices. You can get out of my way and let me save him, or you can stand there and explain to the authorities, his wife, and your conscience why you let him die over a paragraph in a manual. The choice is yours, but you will make it right now." The entire first-class cabin was silent, every eye fixed on the standoff. The man in the pinstripe suit had his phone out, recording. Corrigan looked from Anya's unflinching gaze to the gasping man on the floor, to the terrified faces of his crew. He was trapped. To refuse was to be a monster. To agree was to cede his authority to the very woman he had tried to humiliate. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Get her the defibrillator," he croaked, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. The moment the word was spoken, Anya was back in motion. Chloe rushed back with the AED. Anya tore open Arthur's shirt, attached the pads to his chest, and charged the machine. "Clear!" she shouted. The man's body jerked as the electricity surged through him. Anya's eyes were fixed on the small screen of the AED, which also functioned as a rudimentary heart monitor. The chaotic squiggles of atrial fibrillation wavered, then settled into a steady, rhythmic beep. "We have sinus rhythm," Anya announced, a collective sigh of relief sweeping through the cabin. "He's stabilized, but he needs a cardiac catheterization lab, and he needs one within the hour." She looked directly at Corrigan. "Have you diverted this plane yet, Captain?" Corrigan, his face ashen, could only nod mutely before turning and stumbling back toward the cockpit, his kingdom now feeling very much like a cage. Anya had not only saved a life, she had seized command of his aircraft without ever touching the controls. The 787 banked sharply, changing course for Boston Logan International Airport. For the next 45 minutes, Anya Sharma did not rest. She administered a saline drip, kept Arthur on oxygen, and monitored his vitals with an unwavering focus. She spoke in low, soothing tones to his wife, whose name was Eleanor, reassuring her with a calm confidence that was more comforting than any platitude. The entire cabin crew now treated her with a reverence usually reserved for royalty. Margaret refreshed her water without being asked. Chloe brought her warm towels, and even the man in the pinstripe suit offered her his unopened bottle of Fiji water. Captain Corrigan did not emerge from the cockpit. He communicated through the first officer, his voice over the intercom stripped of its earlier bravado. He sounded like a man who had just witnessed a ghost. As the plane began its final descent into Boston, the first officer came back to the cabin. He approached Anya, his face a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "Dr. Sharma," he began, "the captain sends his... Well, he wanted me to thank you. We have paramedics waiting at the gate. They've been patched through to us, and the lead paramedic would like to speak with you to get a report." "Of course," Anya said, never taking her eyes off Arthur's blood pressure reading. The first officer handed her the cockpit headset. "This is Dr. Sharma," she said into the microphone. For the next 5 minutes, she delivered a medical report, so concise, so detailed, and so technically proficient that the paramedic on the other end was left momentarily speechless. She listed vital signs, drug dosages, heart rhythms, and suspected arterial blockages with the flawless precision of a supercomputer, and advised the receiving hospital that he will need an immediate cardiac catheterization with possible stent placement in the left anterior descending artery. "Who am I speaking with?" This is lead paramedic Mike Jensen, ma'am. That's the most thorough in-flight report I've ever received. We'll be ready for him." "Thank you, Doctor." Anya handed the headset back. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and as it taxied toward the gate, the cabin broke into spontaneous applause. It wasn't for the landing, it was for her. Anya simply gave a small, tired nod, her focus still on her patient. When the plane docked and the cabin door opened, a team of paramedics rushed in. Anya efficiently transferred Arthur's care, handing them the IV bag and a handwritten list of his vitals and the medications she had administered. As they wheeled him off the plane, Eleanor, his wife, grabbed Anya's hands, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved his life. How can we ever repay you?" "Just make sure he follows his doctor's orders," Anya said with a warm smile. "He'll be fine." With the immediate crisis over, a new and uncomfortable reality began to settle in. The passengers were deplaning, but the crew had been instructed to remain. 2 stern-looking officials from Global Alliance's corporate security team boarded, along with the Boston station manager. They walked straight to the front of the plane, where Captain Corrigan had finally emerged from the cockpit, looking haggard and 10 years older. "Captain Corrigan," the station manager said, his voice cold and official, "we need to have a word. There's been a formal complaint filed from this flight." Corrigan's eyes darted to Anya, who was quietly gathering her things from her seat. He assumed the complaint was from her. He decided his only defense was to go on the offensive. "Damn right there's a complaint," Corrigan blustered, trying to reclaim some semblance of control. "I was dealing with a non-compliant passenger who refused to verify her identity. I had to declare a Code 3. It was a security situation." The station manager stared at him blankly. "The complaint isn't from Dr. Sharma, Captain. It's from Mr. Alistair Finch in seat 2C. He gestured to the man in the pinstripe suit, who was now standing with his arms crossed, his phone held loosely in his hand. "He's a senior vice president for the firm that handles our corporate insurance. He sent his video of the initial interaction directly to our CEO. He also happens to be on the board of trustees for Great Ormond Street Hospital in London." Alistair Finch stepped forward. "Captain," he said, his voice dripping with ice, "I witnessed you baselessly harass a passenger. I then witnessed you attempt to interfere with that same passenger as she was saving a man's life. You questioned her medical judgment in the middle of a cardiac arrest. You are not just a disgrace to your uniform. You are a walking liability that I will not insure." Corrigan's face went completely white. He was no longer dealing with a woman he could dismiss. He was facing the cold, hard calculus of corporate power and money. But the final, devastating blow was yet to come. Eleanor, Arthur's wife, who had been waiting by the door to get her carry-on, pushed her way back into the cabin. She marched right up to Captain Corrigan, her grief momentarily replaced by a burning fury. "You," she spat, her voice trembling. "You tried to stop her. I saw you. My Arthur was dying, and you were worried about your protocols. Who do you think you are?" "Ma'am, I was only trying to ensure," Corrigan began, but Eleanor cut him off. "Do you have any idea who that woman is?" she demanded, pointing a shaking finger at Anya. "We were flying to London on the off chance we could get an appointment with her. We were going to beg. My husband has been on a waiting list for 6 months. That is Dr. Anya Sharma. She is the world's leading pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon. She was on this flight because she is scheduled to perform a life-saving operation on a child tomorrow morning. A child you almost prevented her from reaching because you didn't like the look of her." Every person in the cabin stared, first at Eleanor, then at Anya, the full weight of the situation crashing down on them. Anya wasn't just a doctor who happened to be on a plane. She was a world-class specialist on a critical, time-sensitive mission. Corrigan's petty tyranny hadn't just inconvenienced a passenger. It had endangered the life of a dying child 3,000 miles away. The station manager looked at Anya, his expression one of pure horror. "Dr. Sharma, is this true?" The station manager's question hung in the recycled air of the cabin, thin and brittle. "Dr. Sharma, is this true?" Anya met his horrified gaze, her own expression a mask of profound exhaustion. She gave a single, slow nod. "His name is Leo. He is 10 years old. The procedure is a modified Norwood with a Sano shunt revision. I am the only surgeon in Europe or North America currently cleared to perform it." Each word was a clinical fact, delivered without emotion, yet together they formed a verdict more damning than any accusation. The manager turned back to Corrigan, and the corporate chill in his voice dropped to absolute zero. It was the sound of a career being flash-frozen. "Captain Corrigan, your wings and your company identification." "Now." He didn't ask. He commanded. "You will be escorted to a secure office. You will await the arrival of the FAA and our Executive Vice President of Flight Operations. You will not speak to anyone. You will not use your phone. Do you understand me?" Frank Corrigan looked as if the cabin had depressurized, all the air and arrogance sucked out of him, leaving a hollowed-out shell. His hands, which for 35 years had commanded hundreds of tons of metal through the most violent of skies, trembled as they reached for the silver wings pinned to his chest. The metal felt alien, a relic from another man's life. He unclipped them, the small metallic click echoing like a gunshot in the silent cabin. He placed them in the manager's outstretched palm alongside his ID. The plastic card, with his confident, smiling photo, seemed to mock him. He had flown into a storm of his own creation, a tempest of pride and prejudice, and in the space of an hour, his entire world had been torn from its moorings. He was no longer Captain Corrigan, king of his domain. He was just Frank, a grounded old man in a uniform that no longer fit. While 2 unsmiling security guards materialized and flanked Corrigan, leading him down the jet bridge like a common criminal, a parallel universe of frantic apology and deference swirled around Anya. The station manager, a man named Henderson, was practically bowing. "Doctor, there are no words. On behalf of Global Alliance, our deepest, most sincere, please allow us to correct this. We have a private jet, a Gulfstream G650, being fueled for you at this very moment. It can be ready in 45 minutes. A dedicated crew. You will be in London in 6 hours. Whatever you need. A meal from any restaurant in Boston. Anything." Anya held up a hand, a simple gesture that cut through his panicked torrent of words. "Mr. Henderson, the most valuable thing you can give me right now is not a private jet. It is 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep." Her voice was quiet, but held an undeniable weight. "Book me a suite in the next commercial departure to Heathrow. Ensure the cabin is dark and quiet. That is all I require. The best thing your airline can do for my patient is to become, from this moment forward, completely and utterly unremarkable." Her composure seemed to unnerve him more than any righteous anger. It was the calm of a surgeon assessing a problem devoid of personal grievance. She wasn't a victim to be compensated. She was a professional whose mission had been compromised, and she was simply, efficiently, putting it back on track. He nodded dumbly, his face a mask of relief and awe. 3 hours later, Anya was cocooned in the deep blue upholstery of another first-class suite on another aircraft bound for London. The new crew moved around her with the silent reverence of monks in a library. Before the doors closed, her phone vibrated with an email from an unfamiliar name. Eleanor Vance. "Dear Dr. Sharma," the message read. "Arthur is out of surgery and stable in the cardiac ICU. The interventional cardiologist, a Dr. Evans, said that your rapid diagnosis and successful cardioversion at altitude prevented a massive, likely fatal, myocardial infarction. He kept muttering that your in-flight report was more accurate than most ER intake assessments. He called it a miracle of deductive reasoning. I know you dismissed our gratitude, but we insist on expressing it. My husband is Arthur Vance. He is the chairman of the FAA's Oversight Committee for Airman Conduct and Certification. He has already dictated his formal statement. A full federal investigation into the conduct of Captain Corrigan and the crew of GA-171 has been launched, with him as the primary witness. It seems the captain picked the wrong flight and the wrong patient to endanger. Please do not give this another thought. Focus on your little boy in London. We will handle the storm here. Godspeed." Anya read the email twice, a faint, weary smile touching her lips. It wasn't about vengeance. Vengeance was a messy, emotional indulgence she had no time for. This was about consequence. It was the cold, clean logic of a system turning on one of its own. The authority Corrigan had so arrogantly wielded was now being methodically dismantled by the very institution that had granted it to him. She turned off her phone, pulled a soft cashmere blanket over her shoulders, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, closed her eyes. Meanwhile, in a sterile, windowless room in the bowels of Logan Airport, Frank Corrigan's universe was being systematically unmade. Across a grey laminate table sat Helen Schaefer, the EVP of Flight Operations. She was a woman who had come up through the ranks as a pilot in an era even less forgiving than his own, and she possessed a gaze that could peel paint. A tablet lay between them, paused on the video Alastair Finch had recorded. His own face, twisted in a mask of petty rage, looming over Anya's calm defiance. "I've seen it from 3 angles now, Frank," Schaefer said, her voice devoid of heat or pity. It was the voice of a coroner delivering a report. "I've read Margaret's statement, which reads like a hostage confession. I've debriefed your first officer, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. There is no interpretation of these events, no possible spin where you are not the clear and sole aggressor. You didn't just harass a passenger, Frank. You manufactured a security threat to soothe your bruised ego. She was non-compliant, Corrigan croaked, the word sounding hollow even to his own ears. Her attitude, the way she looked at me, it was a challenge. A challenge to what, Frank? Your preconceived notion of who gets to sit in seat 1A? Schaefer leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. She is Dr. Anya Sharma. Last year, the Queen of England made her a commander of the Order of the British Empire for her contributions to pediatric medicine. The folio you dismissed as a potential forgery was a Class A diplomatic medical passport issued by the British Home Office. She wasn't a threat to your aircraft, Frank. She was, by any objective measure, the most valuable and distinguished human being on that plane. And you treated her like a stowaway because she didn't fit your 1970s casting call for a first-class passenger. He deflated, the last of the fight going out of him, leaving a residue of sour shame. What happens now? Schaefer's expression did not soften. Now? Now your career as a pilot is over. The FAA investigation is a formality. Chairman Vance is the complainant, witness, and victim. He will recuse himself from the final vote, but his shadow will be a mile long. They will revoke your ATP certificate. Our insurer, represented by Mr. Finch, has already informed us that your presence on any Global Alliance flight deck would render our policy null and void. The union will file a grievance, of course. They have to. They'll talk about retraining, a long suspension, counseling. But the board has already convened. Frank, this video is a nuclear bomb. It will leak. It's not a matter of if, but when. We cannot have you as the face of this brand. So you have a choice. You can resign, effective immediately. We will issue a joint statement about a long-serving captain choosing a well-deserved retirement. Your pension will be protected, or you can fight us, and we will terminate you for cause. And I will personally ensure that video is on every news network and blog in the world by sunrise. It was an execution, cloaked in the language of human resources. He was not being fired. He was being erased. His 35 years of service, his thousands of safe landings, his identity, all of it was being deleted to make way for a press release. 2 days later, in the hushed, blue-lit sanctity of a London operating theatre, Dr. Anya Sharma stood over the fragile body of a 10-year-old boy. For the next 11 hours, the chaos of Flight 117, the viral video she knew was coming, the world outside, it all ceased to exist. Here, there was no bias. There was only anatomy, skill, and time. The human heart, in its beautiful, brutal complexity, was the great equalizer. It didn't care about the color of the hands that held it, only that they were steady and sure. She moved with an economy of motion that was breathtaking to watch, a dance of scalpel and suture, repairing the intricate architecture of a life. When she finally stepped out of the OR, joints aching, mind buzzing with a strange mix of exhaustion and adrenaline, the boy's parents fell into her arms, their tears of gratitude soaking the shoulder of her scrubs. The surgery was a success. Leo would live. Changing in the locker room, her phone, now reactivated, began to buzz incessantly. A news alert from a major American network was the first to break through. The headline was stark, brutal, and utterly predictable. Hero surgeon, bigot pilot, leaked video shows, in-flight harassment, decorated captain fired in disgrace. The story was a global wildfire. The video, grainy and visceral, was everywhere. Frank Corrigan was no longer a man. He was a meme, a symbol of entitled, outdated prejudice. His face was a digital effigy, burned again and again in the court of public opinion. Anya's face was beside his in every story. Calm, professional, the unwilling icon of grace under pressure. She was the hero. He was the villain. The world loved a simple story. Anya felt a wave of nausea. She hadn't wanted this. She hadn't wanted to be a symbol, a headline, a protagonist in the internet's daily 2-minute hate. She had just wanted to get to her patient. This public demolition felt grotesque, another form of violation. 6 months passed. The world, as it always does, moved on. The name Frank Corrigan was buried under a dozen new outrages. For Anya, the incident settled into a dull scar, a story she sometimes had to tell, a reminder of a turbulence that had nothing to do with weather. Her life was her work. The long hours, the impossible cases, the small, sacred victories measured in heartbeats. Global Alliance had, of course, gone into overdrive. They had sent flowers, donations to her research foundation, and a heavy, matte black metal card that granted her unlimited first-class travel for life. More significantly, they had instituted a mandatory, fleet-wide training program in de-escalation and implicit bias management. They had asked for her permission to name it the Sharma Protocol. She had agreed, on one condition, that the first module of the training began not with a lecture, but with a simple, unedited video of her, speaking directly to the camera. "My name is Dr. Anya Sharma," she said in the video, which was now shown to every new and current employee of the airline. "I am a surgeon. My time is my most valuable asset. The man you saw in that video wasted my time. He wasted the time of every passenger on that flight. He put lives at risk, not just on the plane, but the life of a child 3,000 miles away. He did this not because of a security threat, but because of a failure of his imagination. He could not imagine that someone who looked like me belonged in a space he controlled. Your job is not to imagine who your passengers are. Your job is to get them safely from one place to another. True authority, the kind that lasts, is not found in the stripes on your shoulder. It is found in the quiet, consistent, and unbiased execution of your duty." One crisp, wind-swept afternoon in late autumn, Anya found herself at JFK once more, this time for a medical conference in Zurich. A small electric cart was whisking her toward the international first-class lounge. The cart slowed to navigate a cluster of airport service workers on a smoke break, their blue and grey uniforms a stark contrast to the polished gleam of the terminal. Anya glanced over, her mind already on her presentation slides, and then she saw him. Leaning against a concrete pillar, away from the boisterous laughter of the others, was a man who looked like a faded photograph of Frank Corrigan. The proud, military posture was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. His silver hair was thin and lifeless under a grease-stained baseball cap. He wore the cheap, navy blue polo of a shuttle bus contractor, the logo of a third-party logistics company stitched over his heart where his wings used to be. He looked gaunt, hollowed out, a ghost haunting the edges of the kingdom he once ruled from the sky. For a single, silent, suspended moment, their eyes met across the bustling concourse. In his, she saw not anger or resentment, but a flicker of hunted recognition, followed by a tidal wave of shame so profound it was almost a physical force. It was the look of a man seeing his own damnation in the flesh. He dropped his gaze instantly, crushing his cigarette under a worn work boot, as if it were the source of his humiliation. He turned his back to her and shuffled toward the shuttle bus waiting at the curb, his shoulders hunched against a judgment no one was rendering but himself. He was no longer a captain. He was no longer a villain. He was just the man who drove the loop, a ceaseless, monotonous circle from the terminal to the long-term parking lot, forever orbiting a world he could see but never again enter. The cart accelerated, carrying Anya onward, toward the lounge, toward her flight, toward the sky that had once been his. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep, aching melancholy for a man who had been given command of the heavens and had chosen, instead, to focus on the ground, his vision so fatally narrowed that he had crashed his entire life long before the wheels ever left the runway.